My name is Ryan, and I experienced a profound, near-death experience that fundamentally changed the way I understood life. All of it started with an unexpected medical emergency caused by what appeared to be several spider bites. This was the conclusion we came to, notwithstanding the test's lack of clarity. I was hurried to the hospital as my health deteriorated and I was on the verge of death. I was reassured by the doctors that my only chance of survival was through surgery. I said, "Yes, save me," and they brought me into the surgery room. Of course I consented. The next few moments are a haze. I recall giving in to the drug's effects and falling into a profound, unaware slumber. The clearest memory I have of that experience is traveling to a completely other world, a place that was definitely the afterlife or a spiritual dimension, yet was neither here nor there. An enormous ocean of souls, not water, opened up before me. I had the impression that I was looking out into an infinite void that was brimming with a never-ending flood of souls traveling in all possible directions. It was an astonishing and captivating sight. As far as the eye could see, this enormous field of energy, composed only of souls, was a never-ending dance of human essence. There were souls coming and going, traveling from this realm to the next, as if there were a curtain separating our world from theirs. There was a tangible sense of purpose in this world. Every spirit seems to be involved in some important mission or adventure. I felt as though I understood this magnificent tableau instinctively. Everything had a purpose, and every soul was a component of a larger whole. Curious, I concentrated on a lone soul, a blondish-haired woman in her late 40s. She nodded and smiled gently as our eyes met. I gave the gesture back, experiencing a very comforting and non-awkward mutual recognition. She seemed to be aware of my existence and intent without feeling uneasy. The realm was also layered with different levels of activity and calm. There were areas that were teeming with deliberate activity and others that were peaceful havens of calm light. There was a dimension beyond these that is impossible to describe. Nonetheless, a calm acceptance that transcended the maelstrom of human pain permeated the entire event, a global understanding. There was a tremendous realization that everything is ultimately okay in that infinite space. The suffering, grief, and loss we experience here on Earth are simply a small part of a far more expansive and harmonious totality. Even though our narrow viewpoint makes it tough for us to understand, the whole picture reassures us that everything is okay. The pain we go through is fleeting and unimportant in comparison to the unchanging reality that everything is as it should be. Though unattainable in our current situation, this reassuring awareness reaches beyond us, reassures us that everything will be well in the end. After a while on the other side, I had a strong desire to see what was going on Earth. Though the specifics are a little fuzzy, I seem to recall wanting to take in my surroundings. To my surprise, I was still attached to the hospital but floating outside of my body. My family was gathering in the waiting area, so that's where I initially went. I lingered close to them, listening in on their discussions and even contributing a little. My significant other was talking to my aunt at the time, which made it quite funny. I found myself interjecting, urging them to continue talking by saying things like, "Yes, that's a great idea, and you should definitely think about that." Even though they were only using their bodily senses, it seemed like they could hear me and could sense my soul's presence. This insight filled me with optimism and hope, especially for my loved ones who had passed on. That they could still perceive me and communicate with me in some way, even though it wasn't a constant or obvious presence, gave me comfort. The realization that life goes on after death was one of the most important lessons learned from this event. There is no doubt that the souls of the people we have lost endure and exist. I was extremely impressed by this understanding, and later on, I remembered talking to my ex about our experiences. She once talked about how her mother used to manipulate her by using a Bible verse to make her feel bad. I interrupted, bringing up the fact that we had already talked about this. You and my aunt discussed it throughout my surgery. Recall. She gave me a perplexed look before saying, "No, you couldn't have known that. You did not attend." I insisted, saying, I was there, listening and even nodding in agreement with the counsel. "No," she was adamant, "you were having surgery. While you were still in the operation room, we had that chat." I felt really validated and mysterious after this conversation. I felt as though my awareness had crossed over into another realm, remaining connected to the living even as my body was being operated on. My understanding of the enduring nature of human ties was reinforced by the event, which suggests that the bonds we have with others extend beyond geographical limits. It was like a bell tolling in my head at that very instant, and everything became crystal clear. I could still clearly remember the layout of the chairs, the TV, and even the lighting in the waiting area. My ex-husband said, "Oh, they turned off the lights in half of the waiting room because my aunt was complaining about it." When I said, "It's kind of dark in here," I said, "Oh, that makes sense," in response. This insight had a significant influence. She saw it as a startling vindication of my statements, but for me it was a potent affirmation of my experience. There was no possible way that I could have known those details if I hadn't been out of my body, and she was now completely sure of it. After my operation, there was one more noteworthy event. I experienced a great desire to stay on the other side to continue experiencing the peace and absence of misery from this world, but there was also a strong sense of necessity, a subtle but powerful realization that I had to go back. It felt like this was being conveyed to me by someone or something, reassuring me that my journey was not yet over. I chose to return in spite of my reluctance, realizing that it was the right choice even though it wasn't what I had hoped for. When I got back, I had the odd job of getting back into my body. I can still clearly recall the procedure. Trying to bring my body to life was like using chopsticks to move it. It felt incredibly foreign, like I was using a proxy instead of having direct control. The brightness of the room was dazzling, and the sedatives had left me confused. The voices I heard were disembodied, and I was having trouble opening my eyes. I was able to question the nurses, who had been taken aback by my abrupt awakening. "Hey, are you okay?" "I can hear you, but I can't see you," I retorted. "How are you doing?" "Who are you?" I heard them say, "We're a couple of nurses here at the hospital," which gave me comfort. Waking up was an odd and frustrating sensation. I felt like I was attempting to take back my body from a kind of suspended animation, and the entire procedure was like an arduous effort to reacquaint myself with my physical self. The fact that I could see so well with my eyes closed, even when I tried to relax and relieve the pressure of using my physical eyes, was something that really surprised me. When my eyes were closed, I could still see the room and everyone in it, but it was as if through another pair of eyes, my soul's eyes, if you will. This was because I was in this weird situation where I was only partially within my body. Since I wasn't supposed to be awake yet, it felt simpler to see my surroundings in this spiritual vision than in my physical one. My state must have seemed rather strange to them when they wheeled me into the recovery area where my family was waiting. It felt alien and unresponsive to me to get my hands to comply and move about my body. Meanwhile, I could still see outside the room because my soul was still partially disconnected. Attempting to describe a level of consciousness that bordered on the otherworldly was a bizarre experience. I felt like I had one last chance to communicate with the other side in this transitional area. My grandma, who was long dead, came back to me and gave my aunt, who was in the room, a very special message. She asked me to let my aunt know that she didn't have to grieve for as long. My grandma reassured my aunt that she was okay and that she shouldn't be spending her evenings sobbing. Instead of seeing her daughter in grief, she hoped to see her smiling. This realization struck a profound chord with my aunt because she had never confided in anybody the full depth of her nighttime sorrow. She experienced a deep sense of comfort and closeness, knowing that her mother was at peace at that moment. On my aunt, it had a big effect. The private facts I shared that only someone who'd been in the recovery area could have known made her very certain that I had spoken with Grandma. Even though I was still only partially out of my body, my aunt was able to receive some comfort and closure from this experience. During this time, I also had glimpses of my other grandma and a few other family members, though I don't remember all the details. I couldn't recall the specifics, but my family later informed me that I had stated messages for other relatives. I had a fractured recall, as if the intensity of the event had caused some times to fade away, and just the most vivid exchanges to stick in my mind. I now have a better knowledge of the relationships we have and the consolation that can come from beyond as a result of the entire experience, which was both confusing and illuminating. I've always felt that life is more complex than what our eyes can perceive, This feeling is ingrained in my spiritual perspective. However, having that unearthly confirmation has greatly strengthened my conviction in this theory and given me a sense of calm and fortitude that I didn't previously completely understand. It offers comfort in knowing that, in spite of life's difficulties and uncertainties, all will work out. The problem with the saying, everything is going to be okay, is that it's hard to express how deeply it means something. Even I struggle occasionally to fully accept this reality, particularly in the face of loss or adversity. Even though there are moments when it seems like I'm struggling with these problems for the first time and am unaware of the profound truth I've discovered, I have to deliberately remind myself of this fact. The event had a profound impact on me and shaped the way I deal with loss and grief. I no longer grieve the deceased in the same ambiguous manner that I previously did. Rather than doubting their existence, my grief now comes from missing their actual presence. I know they're still out there, traveling, and that at some point I'll get to see them again. With this understanding, I've experienced a deep tranquility that is difficult for words to adequately express. I'm a happier, more optimistic person as a result, and I'm more prepared to face whatever challenges life presents. In my life, the understanding that there is hope and the certainty that everything will work out have served as guiding lights, offering consolation and a sense of unwavering connectedness. Everything will work out okay. Everything will work out okay.